Anything is possible. Do you believe that? My hope by the end of these 30 minutes is you will believe that truth. That anything is possible. Even, in fact, last gathering, my wife came up to me and she told me a story. She said there was a girl that she met out front, and the girl came up and she wanted coffee, and the team said, "I'm so sorry, we're all out of coffee." And she was just gutted. And she said, "I know, right? Sometimes you just need a good drip, right?" And she said, there's no coffee anywhere. And the team said, "We're so sorry, we literally ran out. Like Mosaic, y'all love coffee, right?" And Beck just gets our team on it, like find some coffee somewhere. And they go and got with the team, and Jillian, who's part of our amazing volunteers here. And some way, somehow, I don't know how Jillian did it, but Jillian is a boss, and she made it happen. And it was during the gathering, she comes over, and she gives this girl a cup of coffee, and she just starts crying. She was crying, "Thank you." So she said, "I know it's just coffee, but I really needed some coffee." And I got a chance to talk to her after the gathering, and I wanted to meet her, and I gave her a hug, and I said, "I have a feeling it wasn't really about the coffee, was it?" And she starts crying, and she said, "No, I couldn't explain why I needed it, but the moment Jillian handed me that coffee, I just felt like it was a reminder that sometimes you just need someone to take care of you." See, sometimes you just need to posture yourself in a way where you just receive all the gifts that God has for you. And there's a really powerful story in the scriptures that I want to go to together. And it's on this Memorial Day weekend where when you look at the scriptures, there's moments of memorials. There's times when God says, "I need you to remember." Right? He says it over and over and over, "I need you to remember." Right? Why does he tell us that? Because he knows we forget so easily. Right? What is it about us that in one moment we can be so filled with faith, so certain that God is who he said he was, so moved to courage, knowing that we're in the very presence of God, and then the next breath question if he ever exists? Or what is it about us that we need to always remember? If it's not just a reminder to us that it's not always about what God did in the past or what God does in the present. Sometimes we need to be reminded of what's awaiting in the future. And a memorial is all about the markers of what we remember. Right? There are so many memorials in America. There's the JFK Memorial. There is the Lincoln Memorial. There's Martin Luther King Memorial. Right? There's all these markers trying to remind us of what came before so that it can change how we live ahead. And there's this moment in the scriptures that I want us to go to that's really key when it comes to us deciding what future we create with our lives. In Joshua chapter 3, starting verse 1, it says this: "Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits between you and the ark. Do not go near it." And Joshua told the people, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." And Joshua said to the priest, "Take up the ark of the covenant and pass on ahead of the people." So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so that they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priest who carry the ark of the covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river." Verse 9, Joshua said to the Israelites, "Come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, all the ites, right? See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. And now then, choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand in a heap. And so when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. And now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carry the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan. And while the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabah was completely cut off. And so the people crossed over opposite Jericho. And then verse 17, the priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. This is one of the more epic moments in all of the scriptures. You have this story of hope and freedom, story of the future being more powerful than the past. The context that we find ourselves in with these people is that it's the Israelites. See, and they had been moved out of slavery. There was an exodus from under the oppression of the Egyptians, and God chose Moses to rise up a people. And he told them that there is a land that is promised to you. There is a future that is waiting for you. But what do you do when there's a raging river standing between you and your future? What do you do when you feel the call of something bigger than yourself, or you feel the dream that God had placed inside of you and it's over there and you desperately long for it, but what stands in your way is a river that you have to cross? So don't you wish that instead of God simply telling you there was a land promise for you, don't you wish that he would tell you there's a path that will make it easy for you? Anybody else, or is that just me? Like, God, why does there have to be a raging river? Why can't there be like an LA river? You know, it's like concrete most of the year, and then like 3 days a year is a river. I'll cross that, but why is it that so often, like, God puts the biggest dreams inside of us on the other side of the biggest challenges ahead of us? And the Israelites have this promise that there's something waiting for them, but they have to encounter the present where there's a challenge that will require every ounce of faith that they have. You see, it starts at the beginning here where it says, early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim. It's the only time you're allowed to cuss in church, is when you're reading the Bible. Don't be mad at me. God wrote it, not me. And he went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. And after 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it, and then check it out. Then you will know which way to go, since you've never been this way before. When you read that, it is a little confusing. Because it says, then you'll know which way to go, because you've never been this way before. But hold up, God. How am I going to know which way to go if I've never been this way before? I don't even know how to get from my house to my kid's school that I go every day without Waze. How about you? I know where the school is. I know the turns, and yet I still put it into Waze. Maybe it'll be different today. It says, then you'll know which way to go since you've never been this way before. But it's what happened before that that's the key. As he says, I need you to watch. I need you to have your eyes on the Ark of the Covenant. See, the Ark of the Covenant was a symbol for the presence of God. It was this literal ark, this treasure chest that they carried. That God told them, it's not just that I'm contained in this chest, it's that you need it as a reminder that my presence will be everywhere that you go. See, there's a promised land waiting for you. There's a future that's waiting for you. There's a dream, there's a calling ahead of you. But if you do not bring the presence of God with you, it will not be the future that you were created to live. He says, then you'll know which way to go since you've never been this way before. Make sure that you keep me in the midst of your presence. I remember years ago, after Mosaic one night, me and my buddy, my best friend, my hermano, Carlos, one of our pastors here, we were just craving Korean barbecue. So we said, hey, let's just go grab some Korean barbecue and celebrate today. It was an amazing day. It's like, awesome, let's do it. And then we hop in our cars, we take off. You know, we've been best friends for 12 years, and we have a level of communication and intimacy that, you know, sometimes some people need words. We just need essence. So when we took off, I realized that we did not confirm which Korean barbecue place we were going to. And if you've been to Korean barbecue in LA, if you've been to K-Town, there is an option on every corner. And when I took off and I realized, oh, no, we don't know where we're going, so I grab my phone, I go to call them, and as it's ring, boom, my phone dies. It's like, it's all right. The car's ahead of me, I'm following him. Like, I'll just follow, where he goes, I go. And then I was like, and then we get to the next light, I'll just pull alongside and be like, hey, bro, where are we going? My phone's dead. As we pull up to the next light, it goes, right, green to yellow. I'm like, oh, good, he'll stop. This brother takes off. Boom, blows through the light. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? I'm following you. I don't have my phone. And I just watch just his car go off in the distance and the longest light of all time. And he turns and he's gone. How am I going to find him? I have no idea. And I feel so terrible. He's going to be at Korean barbecue thinking I like ghosted him. Like, I don't ghost. I show up. And I just have a moment. It was as if I was trying to like channel my brother. Where would he go? And I just start driving and I pass one, like, nah, too salty, right? Pass the next, too expensive. Yeah. I go, I'm just looking far, and they go, oh, I know. And I make a left turn, and I turn into the restaurant, and lo and behold, there's Carlos right outside. I know my brother. See, the reason I could know where he was going is because we had spent decades spending life together. So we had spent time getting to know one another, that we had the type of relationship that where he goes, I go. See, the question you need to ask yourself right now, if you feel like God is not speaking or showing up the way that you want, it could be not that he's not speaking, it could be that you haven't taken the time to listen. And how often in our lives that we find ourselves in places that we do not want to be, and we ask, God, why haven't you met me here? And God's like, because I'm over there. What are you doing right here? Because you got to take the time to make sure that in every season of your life that you bring the presence of God with you. Because if you invite him into the moments that terrify you and scare you, the moments where you feel like you're standing on the edge of a raging river, the promise of his presence isn't that there will be no challenges. The promise of his presence is that he will give you the strength that you need. He'll give you the peace that you long for. He says, then you'll know which way to go, since you've never been this way before. It's this alignment that has to happen in your life where you tell God that you're never going to go to a place that you're not willing to bring him into. Because sometimes it's not that important to know where you're going. It's more important to know who you're following. And in verse 5, it said, Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. And Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so that they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. And tell the priest who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. See, this is such a fascinating moment in the lives of these priests, because they were called to serve. They were the leaders of the tribe. They were the ones that were the symbol and the marker of the intimacy that comes with God. And when you choose to follow him, no turning back. And the story of Israel was a story of an exodus, as we talked about. It's them out of oppression, out of slavery, into the wilderness. And there was a time that this entire people were wandering because they believed the promise that God had for them, but they kept questioning how God would do it. And God allowed them to wander for 40 years because he knew even if you step into this land that's promised you, if you don't have the character to enjoy it, it'll be a waste. And he allowed the people of Israel to wander for 40 years because he said, I got to get you ready. Got to get the stuff out of you that you're holding on to. They'll be wandering and they would say, Moses, what are you doing? We want to go back to Egypt. We want to go back to being slaves because at least we had food. Because sometimes the promise of even a worse life is more safe than the promise of an expectant life. And they were wandering and wandering. And then finally, God raises up Joshua and he says, I'm going to use you to bring your people to the promised land. And then they come to a very familiar scenario. You see, they come to the edge of the waters and they had heard the stories about what God did with their parents and with their grandparents, about how when they were leaving Egypt, right? You know this story. Maybe you read it in the Bible or you watched Prince of Egypt as a kid. Remember, right? Cartoon Moses. He comes to the Red Sea and he raises his staff. And when he raises his staff, the waters parts. The Red Sea parts, and then all of Israel gets to step into a new future. So imagine when the priest got to the edge of the Jordan and it says that the water was raging. It says there's rapids, the force of nature. And I imagine they thought, Joshua, here's what you do. Raise the staff. Call on God to move. Ask God to meet us here. Part the waters. Remove the obstacle. And I imagine that's what they were expecting. And God said no. Because that was the faith for them, not for you. He said, I'm not going to do for them. I'm not going to do for you what I did for them because that was their faith. That was their moment. He said, no, this time, instead of me moving first, you need to move first. And he forced them to get to the edge of their fear, to get to the edge of their doubt, to get to the edge of their uncertainty, to their despair, to having this moment where they had to decide, are we going to go back to what we know, or are we going to be moved to what is yet to be created? And he forced them to stand on the edge and say, you got to get in the river. And if I was one of those priests where it says they were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, I imagine there was four corners, I would have been like, hey, bro, you first. Nah, you first. You're older. You got this? God told me it's you. Because what it would require of them was an understanding that this could cost them their life. And I think God was pressing them to the point. He's pressing you and I to go, am I worth it even if it is risking your life? Is your future worth your life? If your life is rooted in the past, you better believe it is. And he forces them to get to the edge of the river. See, what's the river in your life? That every road that you seem to take, you end up winding here still in front of the Jordan River. And it seems that no matter how you try to go another way, it always brings you back to the very thing that's required of you, and that's courage. It's faith. It's risk. It's initiative. And you have to be willing to take that first step and know that it can cost you everything. But what if at the cost of everything, you could gain even more than you could ever imagine? And these priests find themselves at the edge, and God says, go stand in the river. It's just, think about us. That we desperately want to be like heroic. Right? You know, it's like there's something inside of us that I feel like when we were born, there's a seed of heroism that we all long to be the hero. But you don't realize that there is no path to the heroic without the path of fear. That the material for our greatest selves to be forever unleashed will never be absent of fear. It will be in spite of it. And I wonder for you, if you're like me, that there's rivers that God has put you in front of. And He's waiting for you to stop looking for Him to build a bridge over it. And for you to actually finally learn how to swim in the midst of it. That there's a future awaiting you and I. And it may cost you everything. But His promise is that He'll meet you in the midst of your faith. He'll meet you in the midst of your risk. He'll meet you in the midst of your courage. And He may not make it easy, but I promise you He'll make it more meaningful. I remember before I moved to LA, I was having this conversation with God where I desperately wanted Him just to give me clarity and direction. You ever been there before? Where your prayer is, God, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And that was my legitimate prayer. God, I want to honor you. I want to follow you. I don't want to be anywhere outside of where you're not. And I was at this river in my life. It was go to law school or move to LA. And I was a criminal justice major. I had spent way too much money in this journey. And it felt like a waste. And this is my future. I was going to law school and I was going to be a part of my vision and thought and hope was bringing change to the judicial system and just seeing so much brokenness. I felt like that was my calling. And I was like, okay, in this moment, do I go to law school or do I move to LA? And there was no promise of a future in LA. There was no promise of a job. And I didn't even know what was in LA. It was Mosaic. It was my home. But how am I going to pay the bills? And I kept asking God, tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. And then He brought this voice into my spirit, this verse that I don't even remember studying and don't even remember reading, but it just came into my soul. And it said, if you abide in me and I abide in you, I will give you the desires of your heart. And I just felt God just shake the chains of obligation off of me and set me free to actually create the life, not just that He longed for, but the life that I long for. And He said, if you and me are good, then I need you to have the courage to create the life that you want me to do for you, and it's your job. And I said, all right, I'm moving to LA. Okay, God, now I need a job. But man, I can't tell you what it was like standing at the edge of that river, being so filled with uncertainty, but knowing that God had ripped my heart outside of my chest and He threw it on the other side and said, if you want your heart, you better come get it. And when the Israelites find themselves on the edge of this river, It was a choice that they had to make. Are we going to believe that the future is far greater than the past? And are we going to take the first leap of faith and find out that God has been waiting for us the entire time? What's the choice that you've been avoiding, that God has just been waiting for you in the middle of the river? He's not even waiting on the other side. He's waiting for you in the middle of it, saying there's a hope that you need to fight for, because the promised land is important, but what happens in the middle of the river is just as important. Because in Joshua chapter 4, right after it says that God opened the seas and he allowed Israel to all walk on dry ground. See, they didn't see in this moment a raging river. They saw dry ground. And maybe you just need to shift your perspective that you see a river, but God sees dry ground. But it's not going to happen until you step into it. And in Joshua chapter 4, verse 1, it says, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down in the place where you stay tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and he said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God in the middle of the Jordan. And listen to this, each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. This moment right here is so annoying. See, God has this crazy miracle. The entire nation passes on dry ground. What used to be a raging river is now just a pathway to their future. Standing on this dry ground, looking, oh my God, look how good God is. I'm sure just terrified of but how good is God holding up that water though? Because in one moment, we got to get on the other side, because if this water comes, it's over. Imagine just that walk turned into a little bit of run. And they just all right, we're there. And then they get on the other side. And then they're on the other side. They finish crossing, and then Joshua says, this is what God told me. Go back. Go back into the middle of the river, and I need you to grab 12 stones. And I need you to put them on your shoulder. Imagine the width, the weight, the heaviness of this stone. And I want you to take 12 men, go back into the middle of the river, grab these stones. And then where you lay your head tonight, I want you to build a memorial. God bless you. I want you to build a memorial, and I want it to be a sign. I want it to be a marker. I want you to remember what is waiting for you underneath the raging river. So I wonder for us how many stones are on the bottom of rivers that God was waiting for us to grab, but we didn't have the courage to take them. So I wonder what progress in your life God wanted to unleash and push you through. And you couldn't see that at the bottom of that river was a stone that would be a sign to his goodness. I wonder how many marriages on the bottom of a river feel irreparable, feel too far gone. And you can't see the hope of what's to come because you just see the challenge and you don't realize it's through the challenge that you find your freedom. I wonder how many dreams are at the bottom of the river. Not because they didn't have our name on them, but because we didn't have the courage to go and grab them. I wonder how much goodness is waiting for you. How much hope, how much joy, how much peace. wonder how many stones God has been waiting to build in your life. And it's Him standing in the middle of the river. The waters have already been parted, and He's just waiting for you to meet Him in the midst of the struggle. When me and Beck were dating, it got to that point where it's like, all right, we've been dating for a while, and marriage is the next step. And for guys, the most stressful thing ever is just trying to plan a proposal. Because you're pretty certain they're going to say yes. And like even maybe like 99%, but there's that 1% chance. You're like, would I choose me? I don't know. And we got to this place where it was like, all right, it's the time, it's the moment. And so I wanted to plan the day with her, all of her favorite things. And so she loves nature and the outside. And so we went on a hike in the morning. And then she loves coffee. And so then we went and grabbed coffee. And then she loves fashion. So I had a friend pick her up and then take her to her favorite store to pick out the outfit I would propose to her in that night. And then she's from New Zealand. And so landscape and nature are just part of her being. And so I put her on a train from LA to Santa Barbara, where the train goes right along the coast, where she could just be reminded of home and New Zealand and just looking at the beauty of the water. And then had another friend in Santa Barbara waiting, and that friend took her to coffee because, like I said, she really loves coffee. And then I was waiting on the beach, and she came, and I've never seen anything more beautiful in my entire life. I was just so overwhelmed with gratitude. And she comes, and on the beach there's a blanket, and I had grapes, and I had chocolate, and I had strawberries and champagne, all the Pinterest stuff, right? And we're sitting there, and she's telling me all about her day. And then I went and I picked out this outfit, and then I went and had coffee with this person. I was in this trip, as if I didn't plan the whole thing. And she's just telling me, and I'm just living it up, and I'm just loving this moment. And here it comes. And then on this particular beach, it was a really shallow beach. It was only like 10 feet, and I had friends there that I wanted to document it. So I had one friend in the bushes behind us, like taking photos. And literally, we were there sitting on the beach. He's in the bushes taking photos. People are walking by looking like, anybody gonna stop that dude? Are we okay? And I was just like, go, we're fine, right? And then I had another friend about 50 yards that way who was getting the long shot, right? With sunset in the background, us on the beach. And right, if it didn't happen on the gram, did it really happen, right? It was all for Instagram. And then all of a sudden, I feel my wife, my girl at the time, start to turn. And as she starts to turn, where my friend, who is getting the long shot, I was like, oh no, she's gonna see him. If she sees him, it's gonna ruin everything. Like, she's gonna know I'm proposing. As if me having the most extra day ever wasn't proof that I was about to propose. I mean, what was she thinking? Like, yeah, this is a great Friday. But as I didn't want the surprise ruined, and so she's turning, and my friend is taking a photo, and I'm like, what do I do? And I did what any normal dude would have did, and I slapped her in the face. I wish I could be like, I'm just kidding. I know some of you are like, oh, I thought that's where you were gonna sit now. No, I legitimately slapped my future fiance in the face. Now, before you go like calling the cop, like, it wasn't like a full-on slap, but it was enough of a tap to stop her. And her immediate response, did you just slap me? Which I did, so what do I do? And I was just freaking out, like, I was shooing a fly. Shooing a fly, babe, and I hit your cheek. I'm so sorry. And I was like, I gotta finish this before I get arrested. So I stand her up, and I get on a knee, and then I tell her certain things about us that are between me and her that you'll never know. And see, leading up to this moment, I've been wrecked by this story. The story of these moments where sometimes you need to have a reminder of something bigger than yourself. And so for months leading up to this proposal, every date we had been going on, I was grabbing these stones and I was giving them to her. And I would give her a stone. I would write stone of remembrance, number 1. And then on the back, I would write something I wanted our relationship to be founded on. So one stone said faithfulness. One stone said forgiveness. One stone said courage and adventure and peace and joy. And I gave her 11 different stones leading up to this proposal, in which finally, me on my knee, I'm giving her the 12th stone. And here's why. Because in verse 6 it says this: in the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. And when it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. So I told my wife in this moment, so I told her in a moment when 2 weeks before we were engaged, we were fighting at the parking garage at the Americana. And she said, I don't know if I want to marry you. I don't know if I can do this. Every single person in my family their relationship has ended in divorce. There's affairs, there's dysfunction, there's pain, and I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can love you like this. And 2 weeks before we were getting married, we had an edge of the Jordan moment where we had to decide. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. It doesn't matter what happened with other people. It doesn't matter when God didn't show up the way that we wanted. What matters is that there's a future that is promised. There's a future full of hope. There's a future full of joy. There's a future full of peace. There's a future full of life. There's a future waiting to be reminded. The past is the past. And that God is not a God of the past. And we are a people of the future. So when people look at you and I, they should see some jacked up stones. They should see some imperfect rocks. They should see some erosion that life has tried to steal from us. But what they should also see is that there's something powerful that happens when you move from just a stone to a memorial. When you realize that we were meant for each other. See, the reason that God had this crazy moment where he was trying to move Israel forward, where he forced them to face their fears, where he forced them to not rely on what he did previously, but be ready for what he was about to do. The reason he did that is because he knew every single human being that would ever live would have an edge of the river moment. And he said, I need you to muster up the courage to not ask me to build a bridge over your problems, but to ask me to give you the strength to persevere through your problems, through your doubts, through your insecurities, through your fears, through your despair, through all the things that you wondered, God, are you out there? God, do you see me? And he said, yeah, I see you. And I'm waiting for you in the middle of the river. I want us all to bow our heads and close our eyes. I get a sense that there's some of you here right now. You're desperate to be connected to Jesus in a real way. You're desperate to be seen by the God who loves you. You're desperate to find the hope that you can't find on your own. And if you're here and you're saying, Jesus, I need the life that only you can bring. Jesus, I need the hope that only you can bring. Jesus, I'm ready to meet you in the midst of my pain, my struggle, my fears. If you're here saying, Jesus, I'm ready, then all you need to do is take that one act of faith, that one step where you realize that Jesus took the step far before you did, and he's waiting to meet you in the midst of it all. If you're here and you're ready to trust Jesus with your life, you're ready to cross over the line of faith and to finally place your hands in his hands, then what I want you to do is to pray this simple prayer and say, Jesus, I give you my life. Just tell him right now. Tell him, Jesus, I give you my life. I give you all the pain. I give you all the tears. I give you all the trauma. I give you all the things that I've been holding on to, thinking I can get through this on my own. But Jesus, I'm giving you my life. And then it's when you utter those words and you give him your life, the most unfair exchange that could ever happen happens. And in return, he gives you his life. And it's filled with joy and forgiveness. And it's filled with hope and peace. It's filled with beauty and wonder and laughter and love. If you prayed that prayer right now, I don't want you to overthink it. What I want you to do right now is raise your hand as quickly as you can and say, that was me. I prayed. Jesus, give me my life. Beautiful. Keep your hand high. This is a marker for you. I don't want you to be ashamed. Throw it as high up in the air as you can, because you're saying, Jesus, I need you, and I'm here for you. I give it all to you. Jesus, I'm all yours. Beautiful. Anyone else? Stand in your river. He's waiting for you. Jesus, beautiful. I see you. Beautiful. I see you. Who else? Jesus, I give you it all. Come on. Who else? Anyone listening online? Right now in your living room, Jesus, I give you my life. Father, I pray for every hand that's held high in this room and on live stream, on the podcast. I pray, Jesus, you would wrap every person up in your love right now. I pray you would speak life into their soul. I pray you would whisper how much they matter to you. I pray that they would have no other reality, that nothing matters to them more than you. Jesus, we thank you that you are the God who always brings us into the new. We love you. And we ask all this in your name, and all together we say, amen, amen. Hey, Mosaic, can we right now thank God for every person who chose to follow Jesus, who made a choice. Beautiful. Man, as we said earlier, man, we just celebrated 30 years of Mosaic last Sunday. And it was iconic, and just all the life change and the transformation and the gift that it is to be a part of this community was so incredible. But what I love that we've been talking about last week and continuing is that as incredible as the last 30 were, man, it's mind-blowing what God's going to be up to these next 30. And what it's going to require of us is everything. What it's going to require of us is that we move from simply caring about ourselves into caring about other people. That we realize that we are the marker of Los Angeles. That when people wonder if there's a place where you can find hope, we go, yeah, it's here. If there's a place that I can find community, you go, yeah, it's here. If there's a place where I'm not reminded of my past, but I'm unleashed in my future, yeah, it's here. And we are going to do everything we can to be the memorial for not all the people who came before us, not even for ourselves, because what's the point of a memorial is for the people who do not yet know the sacrifice that came before them. So let's build a memorial. Because statues, who cares? Statue's about a person. Memorial is about a people. And let's be the people of God. Come on.